Hello everyone, if anyone's out there. Welcome to class. Hi Katia. You're here early today, and I knew I had to come in early so I could make sure everything worked tonight together. So far so good. Are you planning to do the round robin doily from Tammy's class? Because that's one of the possibilities for this class, and we're going to diagram it tonight so that we can use our Inkscape program to design more rows onto it. We got about 6 inches of snow yesterday. Had it yesterday morning. It started snowing the night before, and boy is it cold. It's like 18 degrees outside right now. So winter's back here. It was fun yesterday. I would see the kids. We've got an open field next door to our building, and the kids they didn't have school yesterday for a snow day, so they were snowing down the hill. In size 80, oh my gosh, wow. Wow, I just made a few little samples. I didn't even do the whole piece yet as far as the rounds, but I did just individual rings so that in size 20, so that I know what size they're going to be to diagram them. And you can do the same if you want for yours then, even though you're in the diagramming class, you can do it in your head and just tat it or sketch it or whatever. For this class, I want you practicing Inkscape though, so it is a good practice. And you'll have your new rows diagrammed. With this weather out there, I've got my heat on, but I'm still drinking my hot tea. I'm really lucky though, because I can just sit in here with my tatting or my sketchbook or whatever and just stay inside. I don't drive very far. Oh my gosh, yes, it's small. I have only done one short edging as a size 80. But that is really small. You're going to have to put a lot of rows on to make it very big. I hope we have a nice sized class tonight. I think I got all the emails out to everybody. So I better check and see if there's anything new in my email in case somebody wants to get in on the last minute. Side grabbing. one I sent out, email certainly has a, I put a C instead of a D for diagramming. Nothing new there. Guess nothing new on Facebook either, so. Lost my YouTube for a minute, but I found it again. You can remember how to make the teardrop shape for the ring? You said your brain's not working with you, so I'm wondering if you meant you couldn't. Oh, you can't remember. Oh, that sure happens to me a lot. But we are, actually, I'm going to go over that again for today's class. So, and I know that it's one of those things that you have to do some, repetition to get it to stay in your brain, so it just automatically comes to mind. So we'll do that today too. So we'll just start right at the beginning for this. I've practiced many times today. I just hope it was enough that I can remember as we go along. I ran out of time to actually write every step down, but hopefully I can at least get this basic part. I know the one thing I've told most everybody that's been in my class before knows is that I'm not real good at organizing, and so I've got to do that too and get all my supplies and everything all organized better and get the website figured out. It seems like I'm continually learning new programs. Oh, size 80 thread. That would do it to me, I know. Oh my gosh, that is just like no 80 for me. I really do like working in size 20. It's, for me, it's just easier. I've been making, I started making each different size of ring in size 20 thread, and I started out with, like they say, the smallest you can make a ring is 4 double stitches, and I did 4 and 5 and 6 stitch rings, and oh my gosh, even with size 20, those are difficult to close, and like 4 stitches in size 20 won't even close all the way. I can imagine trying those little ones in size 80 thread. And I know that in my own designing, I'm not going to make rings any smaller in size 20 than I think 7 double stitches. or else it's just a lot of fiddling around, at least for me. We're getting close to time. I hope we get more people in here tonight. I've never actually designed a doily before. I don't use them, and I have enough little coasters to put my cups and everything on, so I don't need a coaster, but I may do this, and when I get to the size of the round robin that I want, I probably will either, I think, frame it or put it in a ring, make it the size that I can fit it into a ring. We'll see how far I get. Oh, that's how you got to using the size 80 thread. Yeah, that was my goal too, and I never quite seemed to get there. Excuse me. I got a little burps that want to come up. Oh, okay, yes. The dream catcher is a great idea for those. I know there's a lot of other things we can do with it, and I, at some point, will do um, more things that we can do with our doilies or our round pieces. The dream catchers are wonderful. Do you add dangles on it too then, of anything, feathers or beads or anything like that? I hope that, oh, my clock just turned to on the hour, which I'm in mountain time, so it's 6 o'clock here. I know that it's a hard time because it's really, for people in my area, 6 o'clock is a very common supper time, and on the West Coast, it's only 5 o'clock there, which again, people are getting home from work. So hopefully some people, like it's happened before, will come drifting into class here. Oh, you, okay. Yeah, and embellishments, if it's too detailed, it probably would detract and just look too cluttery. Oh, it's 8. Okay, yep, you're on the East Coast time, Eastern Standard. As I said, I was going to start right on time, but we guess we'll wait a little bit since there's only the two of us so far. Oh, you're in Quebec, okay. I have a hard time remembering where everybody's from. Seems kind of weird to sit here just if I'm quiet and just sit here looking like I'm just staring at whoever happens to be out there. Hi, Pasha. So glad to see you here. Hi, Sharon. I'm so glad you made it. Hi, Janella. Now we're getting there. Hi, Marge. Hello. Welcome. I had just mentioned to Katia that this particular time of day or evening for people is a little difficult for people to get to sometimes. So many of you come in, just kind of skim in the last couple minutes before class starts. So I thought I'd give us 5 minutes here, which is almost over. And I can't remember which of you have never used Inkscape before. Most of you I know have been in the class, Katia and Janella, but Sharon, I don't remember, Marge and Pasha. Pasha, I think you have the program. Didn't you say you'd worked in it just a little maybe? Is there anybody who's never worked in it? Or in any drawing program? We are going to start right from the very beginning today. Review again for some of you, and especially since we're starting out this new season, we'll go right from the beginning of diagramming, and what we'll use today is going to be the round robin doily. Hi, Corrine. Oh, you haven't? Okay. Were you able to get the program downloaded? You played around with it, Marge? Nice. And that's what you really have to do in a program like this, is play around with it for a while, just a little. Oh, after last week's session. Okay, class. Oh, that's wonderful, Pasha. The more you watch, the more it'll become more familiar to you. So when you do want to start using it, you'll at least have all the basics down. Still watching and learning, okay. That's fine too. That's one of the things when I'm learning something new, is what I like to do first is not do anything that they're doing, is just sit and watch at a time or 2 or 3, however long I need before I try it. And take notes. Oh my gosh, you have a Mac now. Actually, you're going to find that there is so much similar in Mac. Um, you know, basically, let's see, what is it? The control key and the alt key. I'm thinking just a couple of the keys they call by a different name, but pretty much they work the same. I used to teach in a college classroom that half the room was Macs and half was PC. So, but if you ever get stuck, it's been a long, long time since I've worked, many years since I've worked on a Mac, but just be sure and ask questions. I don't mind if you ask questions as we go. I can kind of keep watch, and for this program, it's kind of nice to have your questions answered right away, but I will also stop. If I don't, remind me, please, to stop and ask for questions. So it's almost 10 after, so why don't we get on with it? I'm going to take one more sip of my tea, and then I'm going to pull up my Inkscape program, which I have open already. And we'll go into the screenshot. So here we go. Get my screens out of the way so I can get this one so you can see it. And I can still see the chat over here. This is my practice sheet that I play with. And this you probably will recognize. Oops. Up here in the upper right-hand corner, that's the beginning of the round robin doily. Now this I was just doing the shapes and not paying attention to whether they really match up in actual size to the thread. I was just practicing, and here I've got the beginnings of it, and I didn't even take the fills out of the way, so that I just have the outlines. But I do want to show you what we're going to look at today. This top one right here, I have cloned all the rest of them. So if I change this in any way, changes all the rest of them at the same time. So we'll be looking at that. I'm using Control Z to undo. Now see, there's the beginning of another shaped one. These are awful skinny for rings. They might have to be changed to get that shape there. Or you'd have to put some balanced double stitches in to get these straighter sides. And if you wanted them to touch, of course, if you didn't have a pattern that's already got its stitch numbers in there, if you're just designing something on here for scratch, you can of course then, like if I want to join them right down in here, I can just change them all at the same time, make them shorter. But look, when I make them shorter, they're kind of wonky. There are some things that when you manipulate them, they will get a little wonky. What happens sometimes is you can come out with a neat pattern that you didn't have before. And of course this I can always, I even keep this. Say I wanted to put another one right above. I don't know how much you can see there. I could put this up here. Whoops, I don't want to grab that one. Maybe I want a couple of small ones in here. Then I could take, maybe I I want to take all 4 of these and duplicate them or clone them. You can duplicate or clone depending upon what your purpose is. We'll get started and start from scratch with this in just a minute. Oops. I'm going to duplicate it. And some of the things, I haven't worked with clones a lot to know for sure. This was my clone right there. It's still changing the original 6 that I made, but not the ones that aren't clones of this first one. But you can really, you start copying and pasting these. Hello. Let me see if I've got more than one here. No, I've only got one there. I'm going to copy them all. I'm going to clone them all. Oh, I can get my, it's almost like my screen is freezing up. But just playing around, you can come out with some interesting designs just by having fun with them. Maybe for repetition, I'll put 2 of these down again. And I'm coming out with something. Oh, thank you, Katia. Hi, Carol. So glad you're here. I'm just showing my play sheet and just some general things you can do. We're actually going to make the polar grid today, and we're going to draw the, get my selector tool here. We're going to draw the beginning of the round robin doily. I will show you that, Sharon. We're going to do that. So what I'm going to do right now is just open a whole new file. I still need to keep watching you guys in the chat. Okay, Inkscape can make polar grids, which is wonderful for doilies or medallions or anything you can do. And we'll go through this step by step. And I'm going to get rid of some of my little panels I have over here. I want to start fresh with you. And I can move this to make a smaller area there. Now, before we start, I mentioned last week, whoops, wrong one. I'm gonna have to close this other one. I'm gonna get that small again. And make sure anytime this window I have over here to the right, this is the window that I have to look in to see if you're seeing what I'm seeing right in the middle of the screen. So if it's ever, I can see right here that it's in the middle. And if I'm on my paper itself in Inkscape, I can see over to the right here in my program that it is all centered and you can see it. So I'm going to mostly cover that window so we have more space here to work. We'll start with a polar grid. For those of you who've been here before, we have done one of those before. So this is review. And I started telling you about the history. Everything, and this is under the, I believe, edit, and it's called the undo history. box. In other Adobe programs, it's just called the History palette. And this is the Undo History panel. They use the word panel here in Inkscape. This is going to be really useful for going back, stepping back, if you want to undo something you just did, or maybe 5 steps back, whatever. The History panel is going to help you do that. And of course, just like a lot of programs, Control Z will undo the very last thing you did, and you can use it more than once here. So that's a very similar tool. So I've opened up my history, and I use a lot of shortcut keys when I'm working, and as I go, I will give you the keyboard combination for the shortcut keys. But you can, everything we have is under the menu up here. Edit, like a lot of programs, has copy, paste, paste in place, and all your editing type things. Clone is one that we're going to be using in here, which isn't in a lot of other programs. And then the view menu, and when I design, I like to be zoomed in to 1:1. And I also like to work at inches, so down in the lower right, there's this little triangle in the lower right corner, and if I click on it, down here I can reach both my document properties and my preferences. And preferences I've done before, and it's going to, for you new people, especially since you don't all have the program to do this right now, I'm going to leave that for another time talking about it, and maybe a totally different video that's not part of the class. Document properties I'm going to, because I'm an inch person, and Inkscape automatically for my document comes up with millimeters, and that's what's on my rulers too. So for me, and this format right now is A4. I want to go to US letter. Actually, I could make it smaller. I'm going to show you a custom. Now I'm going to I can do a custom size to make it smaller. And before you save a file, if it's a JPEG that's just a small image, you're going, if you're going to put it into another document, like say you've made a diagram and put it into another document, you wouldn't want a full 8.5 by 11 inch or A4 page. You would want, hi Carol. I probably said hi to you already. And so you could do a custom size in here. Like where it says A4, I'm going to click on it and go 8.5 by 11, because it gives me a lot of space to play with when we're learning. And close it. Did I change the millimeters? Maybe I didn't. I did. I have, display units. I got to change that to inches too. Okay. Now I have my inch ruler up here on both sides. So I'm going to show you, you can resize your grid later, and we'll talk about the numbers. But to make a grid, we go to extensions, right to the left of help up here on the menu. And we go down to render. Render is a word that simply means make. We're going to make a new polar grid. So we're going to render it. And once we get here, we choose, we want to make a grid. And one of our choices at the bottom is a polar grid. Center dot, a 5 millimeter center or pixel. This is all starts out as is all done in pixels, and 5 is awfully big. I like to go way down, and I could hit the minus button and just go down, or I could type in what I want. And I'm quite sure I can go to 0. point. Maybe I can't, 0.5. Let's see if that stays. This next one I'm not going to use. You could do degrees down. Yeah, the lowest for your center dot is size 1 because that's 1 pixel. You can't split the pixel in half. The labels, if you pick degrees, on the outside circumference, here it says circumference and how much you want to offset it from your polar grid, how far out from the last edges. This will give you the degrees in a circle if you use degrees. However, it's interesting because the 0 point starts out over on the right end of a horizontal axis. And we don't start out working over here. We usually start out working on our tatting designs vertically up and down because that's what gives us the best resizing and everything. So I can skip all the rest of that, as I have none for the labels, so I don't have to worry about this. Now circular divisions, that's the circles, like if you only have, I'm going to move the circular divisions major, if you only have one, it's only going to give you one circle. I'm going to pick 3 so you can see what it'll do. It'll give me 3 circles, and I can space them however far apart I want. I've got them set at 50 pixels. Subdivisions, I don't want any subdivision. I do. Yeah, this is where I'm going to put in my 6 because that doily for the round robin is actually it's an octagonal shape. Maybe that's, now that I think about it, 8. Oh wait, this is, I'm changing my circular. I don't want to change my circular. I want that to be 3. And I don't want any subdivisions, so I'm going to make that. 1 means all you have is the outlines of whatever you're doing. You don't have any more divisions in it. Now the angular divisions are where we get our arms coming out for our polar grid, our guidelines. I've got going to change the 24. That was when I was working with a 6 point and having extra guidelines in there. Right now I want 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, you know what? I need 6. Because there are 6 petals in that center flower. Angle divisions at center, I'm going to make that the same. No subdivision, so it's on 1. I don't have to worry about this. I'll put it on 1. Now, the thickness of your lines, that is, for your guide and your grid, you don't want 2 pixels. So I'm going to move that down. And look at this, can go to 0.5. Now, why the other one doesn't, but I don't have any minor divisions, so that doesn't matter, but I'm just going to type in 5 there too. I'm going to hit apply. And it takes it a minute to work. And there is my polar grid. Now I'm way zoomed in on it. If I zoom out, you can see it is pretty thick. And if you don't want that for your guide, you can make that layer opaque. So the next panel that we're going to use, and you can see here are my circular divisions. I put 3, so I've got 3 circles. Give me some guidelines. And here are my cross lines so that I have 3 on this side and 3 wedges on that side. It's like a pie cut into 6 pieces. So this is where we'll do our diagramming. Get her back out a little. The next panel we need is our layer panel. Layers, and it is Shift Control L will bring you there. And I'm working on a cheat sheet for the keystrokes. And I have mine free floating. You can pull any of the panels usually down. See how I just pulled the history off? And I could drop it over here. But I'm going to leave my history there. I want that in a stable position. What I usually have free, so I don't have to continue opening it all the time, is I'll just put it off to the side because we'll use layers a lot. Now my grid is on layer 1. Layers are like a stack of clear plastic sheets or acetate sheets or whatever. Each layer you can see through to the next layer below. And when it's blue, you notice it selected my polar grid. This is my polar grid. If I click the eye, I no longer see it. I turn the eye back on, I see it. And I'm going to, right beside that is this lock, which looks like it's like a little padlock, and it's open. I'm going to, because we don't want our polar grid to move at all, I'm going to click and lock it. So this layer is locked. So once it's locked, I can't select it or anything. I can't move it, I can't change it. And the polar grid too, you can't change your polar grid. If you wanted a different one, you just have to start and remake one. I also have guide sheets in the work for these. This is our layer 1. We don't want to work on that anymore. All we want is our grid on it so we can keep it locked. So right here, the plus sign over the minus, I'm going to click on that, and it's going to add a layer. Oh no. Computer, you're not working. Let me see if I've got some windows open I can close here. I'll close my Facebook. I don't have anything else open. Why am I not getting a new layer? No, this is something I do all the time. There's no reason why I shouldn't. Oh, maybe it's because I have that selected. I should get a panel. I mean a new layer. These you can move your layers up and down. If I can't use a new layer, I'm going to just work on top of my grid, because I know if you click on that, and I don't know if my computer is still being a problem. Let me see if I've got another Inkscape open. That's OBS. Whoops. Oh, I know. Do you know what? My polar grid window didn't get closed. I bet that's it. Let's see if that's it. No, it's still not. It should bring up a dialog box that gives me the opportunity to rename the layer. And so I'm just going to work on this layer 1. I'm going to unlock it so I can work on it. And hopefully, if I move it, I can just do a Control-Z and back step one step. Now, the other, oh no, I know. I think I'll get a new layer this way because I've made, I didn't actually tat the beginning of the round robin doily. However, I did tat the rings and a chain piece so I know exactly what size they are to diagram it to the actual size when it's worked out of size 20 thread. And to bring that in, I am going to go to up here to File, and up to import. And this, I'm going to bring in actually a PDF image. Here is my scan, and I'm going to double click on that. And here it gives me a preview of what it looks like. These are the tatting pieces that I scanned. And I'm going to leave everything the same and just click OK. Let's see. Now, Inkscape can have more than one document in it. And so what I'm going to do is do my diagramming for my individual rings and my chain lengths on this sheet, and then I will copy them and paste them into a grid to arrange them. So I'm going to, the plus sign zooms you in, the minus sign zooms you out, and I'm going to zoom way in. Okay, this is the big rings that you start. The center was 6. And I don't know if you guys can see the little brown up there. When I was tatting, I hadn't realized I'd forgot to wash my hands before I started, and I had chocolate under one of my fingernails, and it got on my tatting. So we will make this ring. Going to go over and pick your circle to make us an oval. It's actually circles, ellipses, and arcs. And I want to draw, to get it as close as possible to this, I want to draw it from the center. Now I do have, if you notice, my circle is filled with black. It says my fill is unset, but I believe it's there from before. I want to draw my oval out from the center. So I'm going to hold this, normally I could just, whoops. No, I don't have any fill. My fill is off. Okay, my fill is off. So now the other one I told you the other one I usually keep out, the panel, is the fill and stroke. Oh, I need to go to object. Okay, the object layer. What we've made here, if you do a pre-made circle or a rectangle or a square or even any of these, not the spiral, but just the top 4, if you make any of those shapes, what you have is an object. So I'm going to go up to objects. When you manipulate them, we want fill and stroke. Shift Control F. Now I've got my fill and stroke panel. That's another one. My layers and my fill and stroke are the two that I tend to keep open. And if you're new to this you're not going to remember it all at once. And you're going to have to go back and watch the videos over again and really play with it. So I don't have any fill, and I know that because down in the lower left here, my box has an X on it. If I take the fill off, oops, if when I'm under here, there's 3 sections under fill and stroke: fill, stroke paint, and stroke style. The fill is what's on the inside of the, I'm going to just fill this with maybe a blue. I'm still not getting my fill. My program is not working. It's almost like it's locked up. And I used it all day today. Okay, let's see if we can get the stroke. I'm going to stroke paint, and I'm going to click this solid blue flat color. Now this isn't the color blue. This is just the color of the box that you have to check. Your color wheel down here, I could pick any color out of here. And I'm going to go to black. which is actually, it says 97%. We're going through a lot of details tonight. 100% is black, total black. Let's see if I'm getting... I'm going to close my program and open it up again. Something is not. I'm going to say save because I want to open it back up again, and I'm just going to save it to my desktop for right now. I'm going to call it drawing with zeros. Now all I have is my OBS software and my YouTube software. And now I'm going to open up Inkscape again, and hopefully it's going to be working properly. When you get to the welcome screen, you can select time to draw, and if you click on that, you can go and down at the bottom you could do a new document, or I can open up the one I'm working on, which is my drawing 00000. Now let's hope everything is working well. I'm going to go to my circle. I'm going to select this with my selector tool. That may have been my problem. I'll go to Stroke Paint. I put a stroke on it. My stroke style is where I can pick how big I want my lines to be. Let's try the pen tool, see if that's even working. No. See if I can make it a bigger stroke. I'm going to, instead of inches, I use, for my stroke size, I like to use points. And I use a 0.720. Oops. And I have nothing in the box, so I'm going to delete it. I'm going to try again for my circle. My opacity is showing. I can see my opacity. What do I have? And here you can see everything I've done. It says I drew a path, and I set the stroke color and I created the ellipse. And nothing is, oh, there we go. Don't ask me what I just did. There's my circle. Okay, and it does have a fill in it. So what I'm going to do is go to my fill and stroke. I don't know why, but when I went back to where I created the ellipse, anything that I had after that erased. So something I did prevented my program from working right. But when I went back these steps, backed up, now I can get what I'm supposed to have. And my fill and stroke, I'm on the fill tab right now. If I click on the X, I don't have a fill anymore. I do have the stroke style that I set. So there is my object. And objects, if you click on, we have regular objects and then we have paths. And paths are where we get the nodes from that we can manipulate to change the pre-made circle. I mean, right now we could change its width, we could change its height, we can do the corner and change it. But notice how I can make it oval, I can make it round. I want to hold the Shift and the Control key down. Notice my little X in the center there when I start moving? That's the very center. And you can see it's growing from the outside, from the inside out, but keeping it symmetrical and centered. If I have just the Shift key held down, it's not going to let me make it wide. It's only going to make it taller. So the Shift key will you can make it taller and make it go from the inside out, its shape. If I don't have the Shift key and I want to make it taller or shorter, notice that this is staying the same. It's pulling the size down from this point. It's not pulling it out from the center. And that it can be at times what you want. So if I click on the node tool, you're going to see it looks like this, and I have it drawn upside down. And I can tell you why I can tell that, because there's only 3 points. And when I click on the squares, I don't get any handles to manipulate. So I have to change any object into a path, which you can manipulate. It's path, object to path, Shift Control C. Now you'll see there are actually 4 square nodes on here, and every one I click on has a set of handles. And I can change any of these. Now I can pull this one out. I'm going to Control Z it back in. I can pull it up to change. These are what manipulate your shapes, but this is just doing it freehand. And when I pull this one out, this one doesn't go out to keep it symmetrical. So here I've got it back to normal. And if you want to use just ovals, a lot of people diagram with just ovals. I like to have the teardrop shape that really represents what's tatted. So what I'm going to do is manipulate and change this bottom one. Now, if I click on it, and you can see it's turned yellow, so it's red or it's yellow when it's selected. And now that it's selected, I'm going to go up to right here, this third from the left. Notice there's 2 handles that show. Can you see where I'm working right here? This icon right here. It's got 2 equidistant handles on it, like I have down here. But right now we know when I'm down here, they move separately. If I have this one selected and I click on that, it has made my handles symmetrical so that when I change one, I can change the other. And notice I could do this. Something like this, it's easy because you can just fix it so that, but it's hard. Both handles are, I've got the little handle end on my the bottom of my dotted box. These are called, a lot of times, marching ants that you get whenever you select something. But I can move them and get the point. If I click off it, you can see I've got a point. I got a little wonky shape there. So now that I have this, I'm going to back out a minute and show you, because here I'm doing like this, and wherever I go. But if I hold Shift down, whoops, or if I'm holding Control down, maybe I want to hold both of them down. I wonder, notice how it kind of they keep wanting to hit the bottom. I'm thinking maybe guidelines have something called a snap. Let's see if I've got snap on. I can't tell there. Yeah, here's snaps on, so I didn't have it on. If you're moving things and you see those lines pop up, those red lines, that means you've got your snapping on. It is going to snap to specific points and not always go where you want it to go. I'm going to back out. So this is one way you can make your points. And what's nice about this is if you later want to change your shape, like I know that this shape is kind of wonky. I know it's because of these two nodes and where they're placed. If I pulled my guideline out of the ruler. If I set them, it's not, this is what was happening yesterday is my guidelines won't move. There it goes, they're moving. Okay, if I click on this and move, notice when I get right on top of my ruler guide, I get a little hand symbol. That means I'm right on it so I can move it. I am going to put it right at the top edge of the squares. And so I know that if I just click on this and drag it up once, you can see it snapping in place on the ruler guideline. And now I've got it way out of, I'm going to move it straight up. So it's halfway. And I did that too, I changed it. Sometimes what I'll do is just do a you can use your arrow keys to move things up and down a little bit. A lot of times I'll just move each of these up just one snap up, and that's because the widest point of a teardrop shape, to get it the way we want it, doesn't tend to be down where it started. It's just a little bit off. And now I'm going to move my handles down, and it's going to click on, I've got the snapping on, so it's going to click into place. But see, now this one doesn't want to, it just wants to go where it wants to. And I want it, see where this one is right next to the line? So at this point, I'm going up to the upper right corner in this sideways horseshoe, and I'm going to click on it to take the snapping off. So it won't snap to guides, and I can manipulate it better myself. Now I can get this right over where I want it to. Now you see I've got more of a teardrop shape. So what I'm going to do now is bring it down, and even though I can rotate my paper a little to get it to go straight up and down, I think, nope, my paper won't rotate. I'm just going to have to, I'll get it as close as I want right there for now. I'm going to put the point right down where the bottom of the ring is, and now I'm going to hold my shift key to make it narrower. And see what happened? Because I did it out from the center, I'm going to undo that. I want to take the top, and I don't want the bottom to move. So this time, I'm just going to bring it down. Now I'm going to hold shift. Now that it's centered that way, I can just make it the shape I want it to be. Now obviously I can check it by rotating it just a teeny. what happens is when you get something rotated, I'm going to rotate it extra like that, is that when you're not pulling along, if you're pulling along these arrows, it's going to pull it from both of these sides out and make it a weird shape. With one side, or hold shift, it pulls up from both sides, but you've lost your shape. So that's why it's always best when you're working on a shape like this, that you do it when it's upright. Now I think I can see that I want it a little bit wider, because if you're going to put them next door to each other, so that if you have a second ring that's connected with no space in it, you want these outside lines then to touch the one next to it. So I want to, I'm not going to rotate it, I just want to hold the corner point, hold down shift, I think I've got it a little bit too tall now. I'm still holding shift down. I think that looks really good. Now I'm going to click on it a second time to get my rotation corners. And if I rotate it and then move it over just a little, that's looking quite good. And I'm going to call that good. Okay, so now I've got this size of a ring. I'm going to go down and copy this ring. Control C, copies under your edit menu, and Control D for paste. Oops. Controls. I did Control D for paste. I'm sorry, I'm going back to Control C is copy, Control D is paste. And I'm going to I don't have this one straightened up, do I? Bring down a ruler line, straighten this up, and do the same thing now. Get it basically the size I want it. I'm going to rotate it and see how close I am. Could be a little wider, so I'm just going to backspace and again click once and drag. Now I'm going to click a second time and just rotate it. I know I should be able to just rotate this, but I think it's going to be too fat. No! In fact, it could be a little fatter. I think I'm going to drag it from the corner and see if I can, it might change it a little bit. No, it's doing pretty good at keeping it in shape. I'm going to drag from this upper left corner. That looks good, like it's on the edge. It's funny, I can tell it's a little wonky shaped right now. Okay, so there's my second one. And I'm not going to need the chain piece right now, so I'm going to select, I'm going to move these so they're not overlapping. I'm going to draw, whoops. That's because my layer's not locked. I'm going to select one, and then I'm going to hold Shift to select the second one. I'm going to Control C copy, and I'm going to back out and go over to my second page here. And I'm going to paste them, and now I have both of them on here. Put this one off to the side. Here is my first one. Now, notice that we want to work in one of these sections to make that round robin doily. So I'm going to want to rotate my, back out a little here, rotate my polar grid a little. And well, first I'm going to move it up because I'm going to use this guideline that I already have. So I center it on the guideline. And I know that to get one of these wedges upright, I have to rotate it so that my horizontal line matches up with my horizontal. That makes your wedge straight up and down so we can work on it. Oh, who just came in? Hi, Sue. I'm glad you woke up and made it. We're going over, we've been reviewing, making our shapes, and now we're going to make the center of our round robin doily, the 6 little rings around the center. So I'm going to zoom way in, and I have made this, let me zoom out and show you. I have made this ring so that I know that it perfectly matches the scan that I tatted up out of size 20 thread. So this is going to be an actual size diagram for tatting that round robin doily in size 20 thread. And now that I've made that, we want this exactly centered, and I can see my grid isn't quite up to where it needs to be, and it looks like it's just a little off. But remember, I am way zoomed in here. I can, however, double click on it. Let's see if I'm getting my... I think my ruler lines are off a little. I've noticed this before on my computer. Let me try again and see if I can, I probably could use the snap. From back here it looks like it's close enough that it wouldn't matter. Won't let me rotate it anymore, so I'm going back in close. What I'm going to do is center, this one looks like it moved a little. Now remember I told you about the history. And over here is my undo history. And this last rotate, I'm going to go back to that one right there. And come over here. I still have this line. It isn't matching up with the other one. Somehow I moved it. There was my rotate. Okay, I think that's where I need to be. I've gone back about, how many steps? 6, 7. But since I have this one selected blue, I'm going to go back to that step. It eliminates doing Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. And when I come over, the first thing I click and do on my page, everything below this selected history step is going to be deleted. So I'll go back over here. probably can't tell that it went back, but it did. I'm going to rotate there. Now I can get it. I guess I'm not going to worry about it being too exact tonight. I'll try one more time though. This time of night is probably not the best time to be trying to get things exactly in place. I don't have my snapping on there. I'm just going to move it, the whole thing, up just a little. There. Now I know it's level, close enough. So now I'm going to go back in. We're so zoomed in that you can see. I'm not lined up with this ruler mark, which I can get out of the way now, but I am horizontally level. So now I'm going to bring this down. I can't see what you're saying anymore. Do you know why I don't have it locked down, Sue? Before you came in, I talked about it. I don't know if you can snap to a polar grid. You can snap to ruler lines and vertical and horizontal, but I'm not sure if you can snap to a grid. I tried that and it wasn't working for me. I need to lock my grid. I tried it. Let's see now. I had to close my program and open it back up because something else wasn't working. And maybe now I can go make that layer I need to have my grid on a separate layer. So I'm going to do layers and objects again. I got my layers palette. I probably had it still down here and didn't need to reopen it. Let me see if I am getting... Oh, I have new paths up here. So I am. I'm going to make... See, this is what I was supposed to get before. Remember, I clicked on the green arrow above the minus sign to add a new layer. And this is what I was supposed to get the first time. Layer name. I'm going to call it, I'm just going to, I can double click and then just type in. I'm going to make it round 1 because that's what we're working on. The first round of the 6 rings. And then I'm going to say add. And I didn't get my name on it. I think this is it. This is the whole thing. I'm going to select just my 2. I'm going to select that one and hold shift and select the other one. I am going to just Control C and copy those. I'm going to try one more time, making me a new, and it's going to go above the current, so it will go above layer 1. And I'm going to try again and rename it round 1. And then click add. There it goes. I got a round 2 now. It's right down here. I want it on top of my grid, which is down there, and I can now, since I've copied them, erase them from the grid layer, so they're no longer on the grid layer. Now I can lock my grid layer over here. Isn't that funny? It didn't work before. Now I do have a round 1 here. So I'm going to go to the round 1 layer, and I'm going to, I'm not sure where they're going to paste. I'm going to do a Control V. There they are, right there. But notice now they are on round 1. So they're not on my grid layer anymore. So my grid layer, layer 1, is now locked, and I can't move my grid at all. But now these are on the top layer above it, and I can move those. That's what should have happened before when I was working. Now we've got our grid, our polar grid. Whoops, I erased it instead of zooming in. Yeah, Control V, yeah. I hit Control C again instead of Control V. Or Control, yeah, for paste. I'm going to straighten this up and move it down in place. And if you look at the diagram on the round robin, you'll see that right here is where the rings are connected together, and there's no space or picot in between them joining picot. So I want to line up this right to be on my lines. So now that I have that done, I'm going to click it just once. You can see I've only got one there. I'll Control Z it back in place. This time, instead of using my regular copy and paste, now that I have this selected, and I don't want the rotation, I just want it selected. And now I am going to simply use my Alt D. And if you look down here at clone, when you come over to create clone, it says Alt D creates a clone. And you'll see why I want to use a clone when I get through here. I probably won't need it. I won't need it because I know, I know already that my ring is the correct size for diagramming this round robin, because I made the ring to fit the tatted ring. But I'm going to clone them just to show you what you could do. So I'm going to do, did I hit Control D yet? No, I didn't, or Alt D. I'm going to hold the Alt key, or I could go to Edit, Clone, and click on Create Clone. I'm going to do the Alt, hold the Alt key down and continue holding it while I hit D. And now I have, you can't see it, but I have a clone right over the top. Double clicking is going to give me the rotation for the clone, the one that's a clone. And what I want to do is I don't want to just rotate it around the center point. So I'm going to Control Z. I want to rotate it to put it around the center of my grid circle. So I'm going to grab this little dark cross right here and put it right at the center of my grid. Now when I drag it, it's rotating around the center. I'm not using degrees today. You know, diagrams show people how it is, but you don't have to be exactly in place. You copied and rotated together. I just rotated the top one because that's what was selected. And when I make a clone, I'm going to go back to this original one. No matter how many clones you make out of this, you have to go back to the original one. And if I decided it wasn't quite the right size, look what happens. Every clone changes. And if you're making a design that you're not following something that's already been made, you might want this to change. I can change even the width. So I wanted to show you that. But I'm going to now go back and I'm going to use my history. Scale, here's my clone. I'm going to go right above that to move. So I don't actually have a clone anymore because I don't need it for this, but I wanted to go over making a clone again so that you would, please do that again. The clone, okay, if I was designing from scratch and I didn't already have a piece tatted that I wanted to make an actual size, I could make a clone. All I have to do is I have just my one ring and I have it selected with one click, and all I do is either edit, make a clone, or I do Alt D. Now I have a clone over the top of it. Instead of Control C, which makes a duplicate, Alt D makes the clone. And I'm going to Control Z it back in place. And it is this clone that's on top. So, and it's still selected, so I can select the second time. Oh, I have to bring this down, my rotation point down from out of the center of the teardrop to the center of the circle. And now I can move the clone. Now, again, one of the things we looked at before was stamping. And to stamp, when I rotate it, I just hit the space bar, and as long as I don't let go of the, let up on my mouse, and I did, let's see if I can, there we go. Every place I move it, if I click, whew, my hand is out of control, my mouse is out of control. I can just move it around and click it and stamp it, and then I'm going to leave this one as the last one right in place. But now remember, if any of the stamps that I made, I try and change them, it only changes the one. All these bottom 5 will do that. But if I go to my original that I made the clone from, watch. Oh, I have an extra. I got an extra back there. For some reason, and this, I think this is just my computer being funny, unless I actually clicked too many times, copied and pasted it, copied it too many times, or cloned it too many times. This should be my original clone. And see, it has, I just changed this one original one, and all the rest change, which is the reason you might want to use a clone. I know I don't have to make any changes, so I could have just made the duplicate, just Control copy and Control D and paste a copy, and then I could still double click on the click on the copy again to get the rotation points and do the stamping too. The stamping doesn't matter if you're using a clone or if you're using a duplicate. So that's how we'll get it. I'm going to go back so I know I've got the original size ones, and I'm going to get rid of these extra large ones. Now, you'll notice that when I did it, I should have done one other thing before I did it, so I'm going to go back. This is some of the things that when you're new, you forget about doing. I'm going to go, whoops, all the way back to my original, and I'm going to actually, over here in my history, I'm going to select the clone, when I made the clone, and then I'm going to go back over here. And I should have just the one clone. Let's make sure see, when I'm doing my paste, I don't know if I'm hitting paste too soon or something. I'm getting one below it. I'm going to take out these that don't belong. Instead of giving one clone, it's giving me, I don't know how many of them. I'm going to move this one back in place and make sure that, yep, okay. I just have the original one facing up, and I have this one that I'm going to eliminate for now. Okay, I have just one. This time I'll show you duplicating it. I'm just going to copy and Control D makes it, instead of Control V, which would make it offside, it puts the pasted one wherever it wants to. I'm going to get this one back in place. I'm going to Control Copy. Control D pastes the same one in place. It's a duplicate pasted on top of the other. I did not make a clone this time, but I can still click on this one, this duplicate. Again, I have to remember to bring my rotation point down. Boy, those look weird shape right now, but I might not have gone back to the original shape. I can get it in the duplicate in place and stamp it by using my space bar. I hope I said space bar before. Oops, I got to stamp again. Now this time I didn't have my original one, which I think is here. Notice this, I didn't go back to my original one. So what I can do here is use my original and take my clone Oh, I didn't make a clone, so I would have to, see, this is where a clone would come in. Stutter fingers, yes, yes. And even when I hit my space bar, I either hit it too hard or something, and it put more copies than just one. If this had been a clone, instead of just duplicates, when I made this the right size, it would have changed all the rest of them. But it didn't. I'm going to delete this one. I see I'm going to start over just so we'll get it the way we want it for the next step. Okay, and I am going to clone it I'm going to clone it this time. So I've got the original selected. All I'm going to do is Alt-D, click a second time to get rotation. Oops, see, I didn't change my rotation point. I'm going to Alt-Z to get it back exactly in place. Bring down my rotation point. Now rotate it and try and hit the space bar just once each time. Oops, I still forgot the step I should have done first. What am I missing? I'm missing the picots at the top. And I don't have it right in front of me. I know there's 3 picots on this round, I'm quite sure. So before I do my cloning and stamping, I want to add on my picots. Now, the picots on the pattern that you downloaded for the doily, they use like a small teardrop shape for the picots, and that is fine. You could make a copy of this, move it up, and just make it, whoops, I'm holding my, I automatically held my shift key down, and that's not what I wanted, excuse me, to do. I could just make it small like a picot. And what I did is when I copied this from my sample, I didn't put the picots on it. So this isn't exactly the size picot that is actually on the ring, but it's pretty close. I don't use that. I use the more modern, just a straight line. I use my pen tool, which is this tool right here, Draw Bezier Curves. And I could also do, and because it's officially called a Bezier curve, or Bezier curve, the B is what you use for the pen tool here. So I could do Control B to get it. Now, just to make sure I get it straight upright, I'm going to drag out a ruler guide from the left ruler. And you know, if you go a little too far to drag it out, you're going to widen up your toolbar here instead of dragging a ruler mark out. So I'm going to pull that back over so I have my line. If you like, this is another preference to have 2 rows so you don't have to do any scrolling down. If I go way to the bottom here, I have to scroll down to get to the very last symbol. Then scroll up. You could make it a double, but then it makes the narrower view for what you're working on. So I just go to the ruler right here, and when you can see the inches or millimeters right here, you can pull out from that point. So now I'm going to make my perfectly up and down my center picot. I'm going to go from my grid circle right straight down. I'm not sure this is the right length. So I clicked up here, I go straight down, and I double click there. And that has completed my straight line. Now what I would do to get the 2 side ones, I know I want them the same length as this one, so I could just, because I might want to shorten it later, I don't know if it's going to be the right. Can you duplicate a clone? I believe you can, but the duplicate wouldn't, I don't believe the duplicate would change when you make it. I'm not positive about that, so you'll have to try that. There's a lot of things I haven't worked with still in this program, so as well as the option of copy. I'm not sure. You'll have to play with that. Each ring has 3 pulls. Thank you, Katia. So I've got my first one. What I'm going to do is manually rotate these just to look similar to what I know is on the pattern. So I'm going, did I duplicate it yet? Or no, I'm going to clone it just in case I want to resize all 3 of them at the same time. So I'm going to Alt-D, then I'm going to double click it and rotate it. I'm not rotating it around this center point because I'm just going to get it to where I think it probably looks here. If I had the actual piece underneath me, I could get this right. And notice it doesn't go all the way up to the line because it's slanted. And so it's not going to go all the way up. And I can make it a little more. And then I'm just going to take this one and I'm going to Alt-D this one, and I'm going to see I've got the clone. I'm going to put it back in place. Up here on our little bar up here, which is this bar changes according to whatever you have selected. And I've got this selected right here with my selector tool, which is Control S gives you selector. Let me mention another thing that I didn't earlier. If I've got my selector tool now, so I can select my object or any of my picots. But if I wanted to see the actual nodes, and this lines, as long as you draw with the Bezier tool, you automatically have lines and with nodes. It's not like using the shape tool where you have to change it to a path. A pen line for Bezier curves is actually a path with nodes. And if I go up and have my, if I have my selector tool, notice all I did is hit S on the keyboard. I didn't even have to hit Control S, I'm sorry. I hit S on the keyboard. If I want to see my nodes, when you're picking tools, you don't need a controller and all, you just have to hit the letter. If I want nodes, I hit the letter N, and notice now I have the node tool, this little narrow little triangle. And if I click on my line now, I think I can see, there's nodes there, I just can't see them. Oh, there you can see the nodes on this one. And I moved it a little. So I'm going to Z back and get them all straight and the same size. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to clone that one, Alt-D, and then I'm going to flip it. Right here, you can flip it on the vertical axis, which flips it side to side. This is flipping it on the horizontal, top to bottom. This is rotating it 90 degrees at a time. I'm just going to click, flip it on the vertical axis. It did say vertical. Oh, flip selected horizontally. Okay, side to side, horizontally. I was thinking the dotted line is vertical, but flipping it horizontal means you're flipping it side to side on the horizontal axis. And now I know that it's slanted to the right. To match this one, and I'll get it in place just like that one is. So now I've got all three of them. Now what I can do is if I have my, I'm going to click S to go back to my selection tool. If I drag my selector box around, see now I've got the ring and the picots, I've got them all selected. I can now do, I'm going to back out again so you can see. Now if I could group them, which makes them one solid unit, the picots grouped with that. And that is a Control G or Object Group. So I'll click Object Group. The one thing I'm not sure of is if I make a clone, let's try it and make sure the clone still works. Okay, I still have just my original with the things. If I Alt-D and make a clone, again I have to click a second time to get my rotation, pull my rotation point down to the center, and then rotate it. Now when I hit my space bar and stamp it, whoops, I'm going to get back up here. And then I'm not going to hit spacebar again, I'm just going to drop the last one there. Now, knowing my computer, I only have my original one, I don't have extra duplicates. I was very careful when I was rotating and used my space bar. So now, all at once, we've rotated and got the first round done with the picots on it. Now, I know from looking at the diagram that the next row comes out in a chain, and it's not quite just a plain arc, but it does come out from the center picot, and it goes over and curves into and joins into the picot here. So what I'm going to do now is make just a straight line to start with. And I'm going to use my pen tool. Now, if I want this round, if I don't want to affect my first round at all and accidentally change that, I should go to my layers palette, which I already have up. And I think that is Control-Shift-L for layers. Look under my layers menu. Yep, oh, this is something, Sue. In Inkscape, they do say, oh shoot, where'd my menu go? It's off the screen. They do list them as Shift first, Shift Control L, whereas a lot of programs the Control I's comes first, Control Shift L. But I've actually found that all what you have to do, I can take my thumb and hold down both the Shift and Control at the same time, and it still would give me the layer. Let me close the layers palette. If I push down with my thumb on both the Control and Shift at the same time and hit L, that does work. You don't have to hold one and then hold down the next one and then hit your key for the L key for your panel. So now I've got my layers panel. Notice I'm on round 1. My round 1 right here is round 1. What I want to do to make the chain, I want to make a new layer, and I'm going to lock round 1 so I can no longer select or change any of even if I select all around it, I can't select that round 1, so I can't change it at all because it's locked. I'm going to drag my round 2 up above that, and all I have to do is grab it in the panel and move it up above round 1. Oops, come on, round 2, go up there. The other thing I could have done is with these arrows, I can move a layer up and down one at a time. At least I should be able to if my computer's working right. Yeah, there it went up around. Now I'm going to move it down around, or down a layer, not around. But right now it turned itself into under. I got it stuck inside of this folder up here, which is something different. Nothing that, if I turn the eye off and on, there's nothing I can see. I don't know what that is. So what I'm going to do again, this is why I don't need my text and font. I'm going to go back to my history and stack up. I think that's where I need to be for my layers. Let's see here. Or do I still have, round 2 is still in there. What I'm going to do is drag it down all the way to the bottom, drop it on the bottom. I want to get it out of this folder again, and maybe I'm not going to be able to, but I know it's in there now. And so I'm going to work on this for round 2. I don't need that one anymore. Okay, so now I'm going to draw, to get my arc, whoops. I'm going to take my pen tool, my Bezier tool, and I'm just going to click once and drop, because I don't want to make an arc to start with, because I want a straight line to go, and I'm going to go to the top of the center one here and double click to end my line. And now what I can do is, there's 2 choices. I'm going to go back to my selector tool, and now if I select that, I'm getting the whole thing. So I want my end, and my node tool is right over here on the left above the red square, or I can just click N on my computer and get it. If I click with the node tool, I don't, even though I don't have a center node, I can grab the line and move it up. And since I already have the guide in for my pie sections, I know if I drag straight along that line, it's even on both sides. If I didn't have this guideline and I didn't want to just eyeball the center, I could take this line, now that it's selected, and I can, let's see if I can double click on it. I don't think the grid will be in my way. And I added a new node. Now I know this node is halfway. So even if I didn't have the guideline, I know that it's halfway, so that my arc is going to be equilateral. And it almost looks like it's, actually it looks like I added an angle point, because I'm getting a point right up here. I don't want that to be a point because I want this to be a smooth arc. So I've got this selected. As you can see, it's red when I'm hovering over it, and now it's kind of blue with a yellow splotch. I can go up here to this last little node manipulation, these 4 icons up here, and I can click the Make Selected Nodes Symmetric. And because I know I want both sides to be the same, I could also use the Auto Smooth, and that gives me the handles. But notice they're not equidistant, so it's going to move them separately. So I'm going to undo that, because what I want to do, I want to select this point, and I want to make it the third one from the left equilateral. That way, if I move one, I move them both, so it stays, you know, I can make it off, but if I know I'm pulling straight out, I can make it stay, what I want to call it, symmetrical. Now, at this point, I still could move it up or down depending upon where it needs to be. And I don't have a whole finished piece underneath it to tell. I did actually make, and I think I can, we'll see if it, how close I come. Did I make the, I did on this piece right here, I think. I'm going to move this out from under those. I did make a piece that is the, they're supposed to be, I think, this is the next row. This is actually the length when you go up and go to the second one. Like this is where the picot that you're coming out of is. So I could make my arc over here, but I'm not going to worry about it being exact. And it would have been better if I had this whole piece to use to draw my lines. But I know this is pretty close. And I could also, with my node tool, I'm going to click N for my node tool, I know I can move this to make it a, you know, I can just drag on the line, and whatever I do to one side is going to equal what I do to the other side. So I can do this manipulation till it is exactly where it needs to be. The other thing is, if I'm moving if I'm dragging on the line, notice if I drag up that my handles are slanted. if I want to keep this symmetrical, I have to know that as I'm moving this, I need to move so I keep my handle perpendicular to my guideline that I have here. If I didn't have the guideline, I'd just have to eyeball it to keep it symmetrical. That's better. So there's the next row. And again, if I go back to my selector tool, I select this. I don't think it's exactly perfect shape right now, but I could again do Alt-D and clone it. Click a second time. And I also, again, want to drag it around the center point. So now that I have my rotation handles, I'm going to bring this down to the center again, because everything we rotate has to be around this very center point. And now I can drag this one, and when I get it, let's see, that one, you can see, at this point I can see these should be next to each other and not overlapping. But I'm going to put it down here anyway, because I can see that at this point, this end is coming down and hitting the line, and this one too, very close to the center point. So now I'm going to, whoops. I thought I had a clone. If I don't have a clone, I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to do Control D again. I'm going to go back out and do, okay. All right, there's my clone. Now I'm ready. Whoops. And notice that my rotation point is back there. I got to get it to the center again. I'm going to drag the clone and stop it when I know that the endpoints are hitting that center, or as close as I can to it. Because I can make it exact after I hit my space bar, and drop my clones as close as I can. Now this one's going to be somewhere about there. Oops, I'm hitting something else. I think I touch my touchpad on my laptop sometimes. Drop that one right there. I didn't drop those in the right places. I didn't drop them in the right places, I guess because this one isn't exactly the way it should be. But I can, if I hold Shift, so I can make this bigger or smaller. Or even my node tool. Let's see if my node tool makes all of them. Because just making it bigger or smaller. Yeah, see, it's changing all of them. So I could get it so that if I use my selector tool, even these are clones, I can move the placement of it individually. But I know that at this point I need to change my width so that this, notice the left side, I can line it up with my line there, and now it exactly hits this mark, but now I'd have to move it like this. Now I'm getting closer to what I need. So now if this one should be able to, if I move them individually, they're the right width and the right space, I believe. But they're not, as usual, I have some funky things happening. Oh, my rotation point's not in the center again. because of something I did. Let's see if now I can. At this point, I need to rotate it back, and now my rotation point is right there, but that'll work for me straightening it up to put it right there. And it's still not quite wide enough. And I only did, that's part of my problem too. I'm not going to move my rotation point because now I want to rotate around this individual one. Whoops, I'm rotating around right here. You always have to look for your center point if you've done too many little things like I've done. I'm going to set this right here. I want to rotate this point right here of this is in the right place where it should be. So now if I pull, where's my rotation point, is that it? If I put it right on the end of that chain line, I can just rotate it there, and then I can get it moved back out in place. I'm not coming out exact. That's what I did. I didn't make enough of these. Again, I'll move this one so that this end point is right on. You're getting to learn a lot of manipulation here. Right at the end, so the end of the picot, center picot, matches the end of this chain line. I'm going to click it to get rotation points, but here's my rotation point down here. I want to move it right to the point I want that to rotate around, and I want it to rotate it around where they meet. Now I can rotate this end in place, and I do have to move it out a little. Maybe rotate a little more to get it. Right. That's because my first one wasn't exact. But I'm coming out with a pretty good, if I'd gotten everything exact, you can see how I'm getting it around there so that you don't have to draw each piece. Now you're able to see the nice spaces. I'm going to move this one individually, so I'm just going to do a control copy, control paste in place, move it over. Again, double click on it, get rotation, move my rotation point to the base I want it to, the point I want it to rotate around, rotate it in place. So if I was being more exact, you can see. Now this one doesn't look like it's even big enough, and it may be because I didn't make the original one. Maybe needed, I'm holding my shift key down. Now let's see if I'm getting them. If I do them by hand now, if they're coming out more where I need. I've just got one that's kind of overlapping, so I'm pretty good now. It's not exact, like I would do if I was not teaching a class at the same time. Whoops. What'd you say, Sue? They have reinvented it just to confuse me. New node will produce a straight line without the added node. It will curve. Yeah. It would curve if you just dragged it up from the very center. So, yeah, you told me what I hadn't realized before. I needed 6 of them. So here you've got, and now you would go on, this is where this smaller, and I think it's locked on my grid layer, or on my round 1 layer maybe. I'm going to unlock round 1, which means I can select this guy. I'm going to copy him. I'm going to lock round 1 back up, and I'm going to go to round 2 and I don't want to have anything selected when I paste. So now I have this on round 2. This is this is the exact size of the smaller rings that go up here. And the first one's going to be right there. I'm going to put my points lined up where it is, so I'm going to drag my little rotation point to the bottom of it and rotate it straight up. And I need to move it over to get it right in place. And then again, you can copy and paste. It's still not centered quite right. And put the other 2 in there, and then you can select those all at once. You can group them. Grouping them, if you need to manipulate them any later, you might not want them grouped. You'd have to ungroup them, which again you can do from your object ungroup, or instead of to group is Control G, ungroup is Shift Control G, and just learn one. We're using I'm talking about a lot of shortcut keys, but just learn one at a time. Just pick a new one to learn. And then if I copied and put the other 2 in place, I could select all 3 of them, group them, and make a clone and stamp them around. And you can see how this makes it much faster when you can do this by stamping around. I used to make them and then copy it and move it opposite, and then make the next 2 and move it opposite, and then select those whole things and move it. But with this stamp tool, it just makes it so much easier. All right, I haven't asked for questions. Are there any questions or comments now? And do you think I explained it well enough, even with all my glitches, that you can use the video again to practice it? Yes, I need the picots on these as well as the rings, yeah. And the picots on this ring first, on the original one, so I can stamp it with the picots around. Now, another thing that I could have done is just make these 2 with the picots. I could have drawn this, and I could have drawn this in place. I could have copied this entire section. But notice that as far as this section is on one of the pie lines. It's not a whole section in the pole. Now, I could, if I wanted to do it that way, I would I'll just finish this one last thing. I believe you can, and I don't remember now if I was able to manipulate it individually or not. That's going to have to be for another class, or just try it. One of the things to do is just try and see. You know the basics of how to do it. Now work with it and see what you can do and not do. Because I can only teach so much in one class. And I'm not hitting all the things like that. Sometimes I don't know myself what somebody's going to ask, but I do remember trying it, and I don't remember what the answer was because I don't have it written down in front of me. What was I going to say? Oh, I could go back to my layer 1, which is my grid. I could go over here and unlock it, and then I can select my grid. Let's back out so you can see if it's selected. I've got something else selected along with it. If you see something like this, it means I've got something over here selected at the same time. And I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to just double click on this. Whoops. Go back to my my selector tool. I'm hitting things on the, and I could, why can't I rotate? I thought I unlocked it, Polar Grid, it's unlocked. My rotation point should be in the center. I don't know what I have selected, but I'm not. Remember in the beginning I rotated my Polar Grid? I think it's getting too late at night and I should be able to go back and rotate that if I made it right. It's okay, I was able to get your mind back on track. In the beginning, Kathy had said she'd forgotten even how to make the ring. And get it right. Are they grouped in theory? The line items should clone in theory. Yes, yes, they should. They should. And I'm not, this is the stamp tool is fairly new too, so I'm not familiar with everything that how you can manipulate things when they've been stamped from a clone. And how much you can ungroup things and move individual things. I do know with a clone, you always have to make sure that your original is the one you're going to change if you want the rest to change. But like on this, we could have just done duplicates, but we would have had to make sure every little piece was exactly right so that when it duplicated around, we could change the width or whatever with everything else changing. The other thing to think about, and what could be why, when I took my first, let me see if I can get back to it. Another thing to think about, and that I haven't played with enough, is I think this was my original. Oh, did I lock that layer probably? Let me unlock. Sometimes if I get to doing so many things, I don't know why I don't think I have anything locked. I should be able to select. Oh, I'm not on the right. I'm not on the round one. Okay. Oh, my chains were on round 2. Let me get to round 2. Okay. Now I can select this. Oops, I don't want to move it or rotate it. I want to see what happens if it's just moving it up and down. I don't think I grouped it. Let me select just the chain and go to the node tool and see. Oh, that is making it bigger. This is where you can come up with a whole new design. I can take what I have and I could do something like this. And then maybe instead of having 3, I could put 1 up here or whatever else I want to do. You can end up just by playing around. I'm going to take my clone here and make it bigger. Take a couple of the, just a 6-ring center is a very common, that kind of a center, a 6-ring, people usually call it a daisy, that is not copyrighted. You can start any medallion with a circle of 6 because that is a common, well-known tatting formation. Okay, and if it's like a clover too, you can't copyright a clover. Now, if you copyright your whole design, then yeah, the number of stitches in that and the way you've got other rings or whatever arranged on it, that you can copyright. But just a clover, I mean, even if your rings are exact the same size, or even here, if these were 12 stitches in the whole thing, or 16 double stitches in the whole thing, and then a round of 6. You can't copyright that. You copyright the larger part. Even if it's only just maybe these chains here and this ring here, if that combination hasn't been done before, then you can copyright the whole design. But that does not mean you own copyright of a 6-ring center like this. Element, yeah, elements. Yeah, clover is a tatted element. This afternoon we talked about design elements, but the tatted elements, the common formation of tatted elements, can't be copyrighted. So now, any questions before we finish? And please play around with it. Hopefully you won't have some of the glitches I had. I'm thinking sometime it makes a grid a strange color to keep lines easy to see against the design. Yes, I could have made my grid. That's a good suggestion, Marge, is to make your grid a different color. And then you'll see what's grid lines and what's actually on there. The other thing I could do is let's see if I can on my layer. I don't think I can make the layer. Let me get it's unlocked. So if I select it now, the grid, I can, I've got the grid selected, and then I can go into, where's my fill and stroke here? I could go into my stroke paint. No, I don't know if I can change my grid if it's made from a polar grid. Let's see if my polar grid will change color. If I had drawn it by hand, I would have been able to change it. You could, for working purposes, change everything you're doing into a different color and change it back to black when you're done. That way your grid would be black, and that's why if I'm printing out a grid, I like to print it out in a very, very light gray so it doesn't get in the way of. And I'm going to work with that just a little bit and see what I can do with it. If there's any way I can make the polar grid itself, maybe change colors. But it's not. Even if I click down here in my color bar to try and make it a different color. The fill is changing color. The whole grid is changing color. Which, that probably wouldn't be so bad if we made it a really light color. But now all you see is the outer circle. You don't see the inner grid lines. That's interesting, very interesting. Maybe for this, I need to go to the fill paint. No object selected. This is really interesting. Something to play with. So I guess no other questions or comments. That's it for tonight, and I will see you next week. In a layer group all and then change color. Corel Draw will do that. I am going to go back again in my history to where I set a stroke color. I'm going to take it away. Let's see if whoops. move that out of place. If I select everything on a layer, if I had these grouped, I could, let me just individually select them. Now they're all individual, and let's see if I can change the stroke color all at once. How about if I Control G and group them? Now it's a group. Can I change that all at once? Let me pick a color down here. See, it's changing the fill and not the stroke when they're grouped together. It's not changing there, only if I select the pre-set colors. Well, it's going to be a fun thing to play with, so we'll talk to you next week. The stroke style would be changing the width of it. That might be possible, I don't know, Sue. I know you can change the individual objects. Stroke paint. It's still changing the fill. You know, this could be one of those things like I'm doing too much and my program is not. Because even though I'm on the stroke paint, let me make the stroke side, yeah, I can change the stroke size, but I can't seem to change the color because it changes as if I'm on my fill. Yeah, maybe the other sliders would be something very interesting to play around with and see what we can do. Oh, Stephen, hi! I'm so glad you stopped in. We're just finishing up class, and I don't think you were in here before. Didn't you just come in? We're just finishing up. So maybe, yeah, the sliders. On the second row, there is a blue square with outline. My second round. Blue square with it. Let me see. There I've got just the round one. Yeah, I'm glad you came in. You'll have to watch the replay. There have been some glitches, and I think some of it's been my computer. Need Alt plus color for stroke choice. Let me try that and see. I'm going to go back in my history again so I get rid of this wide stroke on this one where I changed it. Whoops. There's my fill and stroke. I'll use that instead and make that stroke on this one. I'm using my stroke style. Now it's at 0. I don't want it at 0. I'm going to change my stroke to points again and put it back at 0.72. So there's my stroke. I get rid of the fill. So I have no fill, no fill. My stroke paint. Let me see if I can change it on here. No, let me go down here. I don't know why. Like I said, it could be a glitch in my computer. Sometimes Inkscape gets confused. I wonder if the polar grid lines are set to color in the initial page setup before. Now that's a good possibility, Pasha. I'll have to try that. If I'm already have my stroke set set to a color, maybe then when I make my grid, it might come out a different color. I'll have to try that this week and see if that works. And the only other thing I can think of is that once you have your polar grid, is if you use it to make your own grid, you know, just by putting it on a bottom layer, making it, you know, the exact same as the grid, just making the grid manually can give us a grid that's the strokes. That's the only alternative if we can't find a way to do it. Color sheet of color you like and copy and paste it in the box in the lower right in stroke paint. Yeah, you know, there's a lot of good suggestions for what things we can try. And I hope you'll please try some of them, and I will too, and see what we come up with. And this grid, I was surprised. I thought I had my lines set to a thinner width, and maybe I didn't get. Notice how I must not have changed my circular grid lines. Notice how my polar grid lines to that, the angle lines are so much lighter, and that helps too if you're drawing with a heavier line, but my circular grid lines could be smaller. I think I forgot to change that when I made the polar grid. Oh, RGB worked? Okay. Let me back. It did. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Thank you. The fill and stroke box before the thing looks like an outline. Question mark. Before the question mark. Oh, right there? Oh, that's the swatches. Yeah, you can have pre-made swatches. Let's see if I can make a new one. Does it have a make new, or can I just change it and make a new one? No, it changes this swatch color right here. I must be able to. What have I got here? Switch swatch color. Huh. I'm going to have to play with that more too, but thank you, the RGB. And that's making the change according to just the red, green, and blue palette, which is what computer screens, TVs, all the colors that come on your TV or on your computer screen are red, green, and blue colors that are additive rather than subtractive colors, that's different than the printing colors, the CMYK. Yeah. Well, that's great. Thank you. When we work together, I can learn a lot from you guys, hopefully as much as you learn from me. So, thank you, thank you. Oh, you RGBA, okay. I just changed to the oh, I'm on the swatches. Go back here. Yeah, it just says RBG, so There's CMYK. If you're going to print something, you'd want to use it's best if you use the CMYK. At least back when I was in school. I don't know, so many things change over the years. Yeah, magenta, cyan, and yellow. So anyway, and black, which is the K for CMYK. There isn't a pure black. When you mix these colors together, magenta, cyan, and yellow, and so they add black to give the black a boost and get black. All right, we even covered a little color tonight, so thank you all for coming, and I will see you next week. We are at our end right now.